Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today, Behavior did a community live stream where they talked about which changes from the last PTB are going to be coming to the live servers this coming Tuesday, and they also talked about which changes they're not going through with, at least not yet. In this video, I want to briefly talk about these decisions and whether or not I think they're good or bad, and obviously this is just my opinion. You guys can let me know down below what you think. Starting off with the big one, they said they are not going through with the slugging reduction or the tunneling reduction. However, they are going through with some of the camping reduction changes. Now, personally, I do agree with the decision to not go through with the tunneling reduction changes because, as I've mentioned, this is just not the right way to go about reducing tunneling. All you're doing is hurting the weaker killers, and the stronger killers can still tunnel with no issue at all. Myself on the PTB, I was still able to tunnel ruthlessly, hook after hook, very consistently, very easily, even with these changes added. And again, there was no incentive for killers to not tunnel. At least in the very first PTB, they had all the stuff that they got for going for new hooks. This recent PTB didn't have that. There was no incentive at all to go for new hooks whatsoever. And again, the actual anti-tunneling aspect didn't really do that much in preventing the killers from tunneling, especially the strongest ones. The ones who suffered the most were all of the lower tier killers. I do not agree with the decision to hold off on the slugging reduction changes. I think those should have been pushed through immediately. I don't know why they're waiting so long to push this through. They don't even seem that problematic when you play them on the PTB. I did all kinds of sabotaging and all kinds of stuff where I was specifically trying to get slugged, and I was never being slugged for a full 2 minutes to where I could recover on my own. It's really circumstantial. And again, I think being slugged on the ground for 4 minutes, whether it's a killer slugging everybody at 5 gens, or even if it's a killer slugging for the 4K at the very end, and you're just that person who's sitting there waiting for the killer to find your teammate who's hiding in a locker. It's so boring. And if you're on the ground for 2 minutes, like, you should be able to get up. Like, it's nobody wants to sit there for 4 minutes. They need to add something very soon to reduce how easy it is for a killer to just leave you on the ground and bleed you out if they want to. As far as the camping reduction changes, I actually like what I'm seeing here. The survivors will still be able to see their teammates' resolve bars when they're on the hook, so they know how long they're being camped and how close they are to being able to unhook themselves. I think that is massively valuable for solo queue, and that should absolutely be added to the game. They also made it to where the bar fills faster the longer the killer is within the range. I don't have a problem with that either because honestly, my bar never gets full when I'm playing Survivor anyway, and if the killer is going to proxy around you for a long period of time when no survivors are there, I think this is a good change. And then they reverted the range back to 16 meters instead of 20 meters, which I think is great. That was my biggest issue with the anti-camping changes, is increasing the range. I think that is super unnecessary. One thing that's interesting here is they said that they're increasing the base kit endurance and haste you get off hook to 15 seconds from 10 seconds. And I just don't quite understand this. Like, what is an extra 5 seconds gonna do? If a killer really wants to tunnel you, like 5 seconds isn't gonna make a difference. I don't really truly understand the point of this, other than just to give a little bit of extra cushion to people who are getting tunneled, or maybe it's for end game, so you have 5 extra seconds to run to a gate or something. I just don't understand this. In the PTB they had it at 30 seconds with some extra stuff added in. Now they're just making it 5 extra, and they want to monitor it, and they're also talking about MMR. I don't really see how calculating MMR would have an impact on camping and tunneling, but I guess we'll see. And then they mentioned that they want to look into improving the new player experience, which I think is great, especially with how overwhelming this game is when you start. The tutorial should talk about perks. It should talk about a lot more things than what's in there currently. And if anybody comes to the game in its current state and just jumps right in, they're going to be so overwhelmed, and I'm sure that they are super overwhelmed. So hopefully they can find a way to make it a bit more appealing and less overwhelming for brand new players. They're going to be reverting all of these perks back to their current live versions, which I think is great, especially Furtive Chase. Like I mentioned, I love this perk, and they almost killed it, and it's really silly because this is a perk that heavily incentivizes not tunneling and highly benefits you for not tunneling, and it's also just a lot of fun and unique. And they almost killed it, but we're getting it back, thank goodness. And one thing to note is they are cutting the duration of Off the Record in half. It is going to be 40 seconds of endurance and Iron Will and all that instead of 80. The very underwhelming Skull Merchant changes are going to be coming to the game, so I'm sure we'll continue to see nobody playing her. The base kit Cenobite nerf that everybody hated is being reverted, so Cenobite mains rejoice. By far the most surprising decision that they made, at least in my opinion, is that they're going through with the Medkit changes, which means that the buffed syringes are going to be coming to the game on Tuesday. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, they made syringes to where when you use them, it immediately gets rid of your exhaustion on the spot. So you can use exhaustion perks back to back, and then if you have blood pact, you can use exhaustion perks again, or you can bring multiple exhaustion perks. You can live up to a building on a second floor, pop a syringe, and then balance landing off. You can balance landing and then pop a syringe and then dead hard. You can just use live twice and get so much distance. Like, these syringes are going to be insane, especially when you have multiple survivors using them, or if you just give them to the strongest loopers on the team. Just imagine a survivor who can juice you, and that survivor gets two not sprint bursts, you can't use sprint bursts, but 2 lives, 2 balanced landings, 2 dead hards. This is so crazy. And everybody was talking about how busted this is going to be and how it's essentially a buff. Like, the passive healing is really good, obviously, but this is better, especially in the hands of really good survivors or in the hands of teams that are going to use this. I don't know, man. I'm genuinely shocked that this made it to the live servers, but hey, I guess we'll just see what happens. Wicked and Breakdown are both going to be reverted to their current live version, but not until a later hotfix. And they did mention that Wicked is going to be kill switched until that time, so that you can't pair it with Resurgence and get immediately fully healed off of a basement hook. And finally, they talked about pallet density, which has been looked at overwhelmingly negative by the community since they introduced it with the last chapter. And it looks like they're going to be making some changes, but it's hard to tell what these changes are going to look like until we actually see them in the game. It says they're going to be rebalancing strong and god pallets on some maps like Macmillan and Asylum. They're going to be reducing the strength of chainable loops, which they mentioned in the live stream, talking about going from Killer Shack to a jungle gym. They want to increase the space in between so it's not super easy to chain those loops. Again, it's really hard to tell without actually playing it or seeing it what this is going to look like or how much of a difference this is going to make. And they talked about randomizing tiles specifically on Swamp and Asylum and Red Forest, because these maps in particular would spawn with multiple pallets, as you've seen in on Father's Chapel, when you would have like a tile that had a pallet on each side. And it was just really stupid that you could have multiple pallets spawn in those tiles. So I think they're talking about that not happening anymore, which is fantastic. So overall, I think they did make some really good decisions here, where it seemed like they did listen to the community, and we should give Behavior some credit for that. However, I do think they also made some very questionable changes, and there are some things coming to live servers that might end up being really problematic, and then there's some things that are just kind of unknown. So I guess we'll just see what happens, but I do want to give them credit for the good decisions that they did make and for listening to the community on important things, even if they didn't listen to the community on other things like the syringes, which I still can't believe. But I'm very interested to see how much will actually change between now and the next chapter, since they delayed November's chapter all the way to January because they wanted to spend this time doing bug fixes and quality of life fixes and all these things and making all these changes, and a lot of this stuff isn't working out the way that they thought. So I'm just curious what is actually going to be different. How much better is the game going to be? How much less bugs will there be? How much more fun will the game be? Is MMR going to be better? All of these things. I'm curious, because January is coming up. Like, I think they're going to announce the new chapter for January pretty soon. And I just don't know behind the scenes how much progress they've actually made. I imagine it's probably not the amount of progress they were hoping, considering we started getting these quality of life PTBs back in August or early September, and it doesn't seem like much has really happened. I guess we'll see if there's another PTB with some more quality of life changes maybe in December, or are we just going to have to wait till the new chapter? I don't know, just a lot of question marks, but there's my thoughts on everything they talked about in today's live stream. Let me know down below what you think. I am excited to at least test this stuff out and see what kind of impact these things do have. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.